Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my August Reflections video. So in this video, we're going to take a look at some of the decks I worked with in August, some of the books I've read. August was a very busy month for us. We had a lot of trips planned, there were some big birthdays, not mine, but others. And it was a lot of fun, but it was also very, very busy. So my crafting, taroting was kind of limited to a small window. Although I am excited to say that while we were camping, I have a lot of time to study. So I was super excited to be able to actually take a big chunk of that time and start learning Lenormand or Lenormand, depending on how you say it. It was really exciting and I'm actually really enjoying it, like way more than I thought I was going to. And now I've kind of started collecting Lenormand cards. So there's that. So we'll take a look at probably some of those either in this video or maybe another video, depending on how long all this takes. So to start off the decks that I worked with this month, I actually did a monthly forecast spread in August, which was really interesting and something that I quite enjoyed. So I think I will probably do that again for September. For that particular spread, I used the Darkness of Light Tarot and the Earthbound Oracle. Now I've mentioned these two decks, I think, together in previous videos because I do really like the way that they kind of converse with each other and the conversations that they have. I love the kind of busyness, not that this is a busy deck, but the texture, the layer, the busyness of the Darkness of Light, and then you contrast that to kind of this simpler, more minimalistic artwork of the Earthbound Oracle, and I think they just work really well together. So this is a pairing that I've actually found myself using quite often because I think it just works really well together. And I like the balance of light and dark, and I think that that is really cool too. I mean, look at this. We have 8 of Blades and Deceit. You just can't make this stuff up, right? I just can't stack a deck like this. We have Judgment and Life. They just work so beautifully together, and they just have such wonderful messages. And it's just a pairing that I've really enjoyed working with. So we have 8 of Coins and Reflect. So really, really beautiful. 2 decks that I find myself working with quite frequently, and I find myself drawn to work with because of the not only aesthetically are they just beautiful together, but that dark and light message really tends to work really well, and they kind of balance each other out, and I just find that to be really fascinating. So these are definitely 2 decks that I really like to pair together because I think they're just gorgeous. I mean, I could just keep flipping cards and we would just keep getting those wonderful messages coming through. That's a fun practice that I like to do sometimes too, just on a total side note. For when I'm kind of playing with what Oracle and Tarot decks that I might like to use together. This is a process that I do. I just lay them down. I give them both a shuffle, I lay them down, and I just flip them over like this to see what messages I get from these cards. And it's just a really beautiful process, and it definitely allows me to take a look at how certain decks interact with each other. So just total side note from the monthly decks that I've worked with, that is kind of one of the ways that I determine how I might like to use a tarot and oracle together is I do this practice. And it's just really, really lovely. And I highly recommend it if you have a tarot and an oracle deck that you might like to see how well they play together. I think this is a beautiful way to do that and to just kind of take a look at the conversations that they have with each other. It's really interesting. So that is the Darkness of Light Tarot and the Earthbound Oracle. So the next deck that I worked with, and I mentioned this earlier in this video, that August was a bit of a weird month for me tarot-wise. I had a couple of weeks where I didn't do tarot and oracle together, which was kind of odd for me, and you'll see that reflected in my upcoming August journal video. One of the decks that I used, I did attempt to do a tarot challenge, and it just, while I enjoyed it, it just wasn't the right time for me to do that. And so the first week and a few days of August, I did a tarot challenge using the Tarot of a Lucid Dream, and this is a deck that I had never used before. I really enjoy it, and I wanted to get to know it a little bit better, so I decided to use it, and I did a bunch of three-card readings, and I'll talk about that more when we get to that into my journal, because that kind of relates into that. But this deck I just used as on its own, as a standalone, for some 3-card readings, and this is not one of the cards I care for. There's very few cards that I don't like in this deck. That happened to be one of them, but the majority of them I absolutely love. It does have extra cards, which I do leave in this deck because I do find them to be really fascinating. And I don't know if this deck is available anymore. I think it was like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, and I got it through a trade, so I really don't know anything about it. Here's another one of those extra cards, which I actually really like in this deck. So anyway, this is a deck that I've just really enjoyed. I love its small size. I love the fact that it's borderless and the titles are just, worked into the artwork, and I think that's really gorgeous. And I really like the art style of it. So yeah, it's just a deck that works really well for me. There's another one of those cards. Oh, love those. Anyway, it's a deck that I really enjoy working with, and I'm glad that I was able to take that time with it. But I did the process of doing just one deck all week and not doing my normal Oracle Tarot daily pull. I found that I really missed that. So after this first week, and this just wasn't working, and we went on vacation, and it was like a whole thing, I ended up, when we got back, going back to my normal routine. But for the first week, this is what I used, and I do absolutely love this deck, and I will be using it again because it is kind of one of my favorites, and it's just like, it's the perfect size. I have found that I really like tarot decks that are small. I want the tarot in a tin size. I want the regular playing card size tarot. They're so much easier for me to work with, and I keep finding that I keep trimming all of my decks down, and you'll be seeing that coming up in some upcoming videos over the next few months. But I've been trimming a lot of my decks down, trying to make them smaller, because they're just, when they're normal size, like even the Darkness of Light tarot, even though it's standard tarot size, it's a little bit thicker cardstock. This cardstock's not my favorite, but I can work with it. But even this is sometimes a little bit difficult for me to work with, difficult for me to shuffle. So I've been trying to find ways to make that easier for me, so that I do want to use those decks, because I find that the decks that are hard for me to handle, I don't end up using them, because it's hard for me to work with. Tactilely, it's not a great experience, so I tend to stay away from them. And they may be fantastic decks, and I'm just not using them because they don't physically work for me in my hands. And of course, that's one of the reasons why I mod decks, and I've just gone off on a total tangent there. So let's get back to the issue at hand, which is decks I worked with in the month of August. So that was Tarot of a Lucid Dream. So the next deck that I worked with in August was the White Sage Tarot in a Tin, and this was a deck that I got right before we went on vacation, and that's kind of why I ordered it. It's a deck that I've been wanting, and I love that it's in a tin, and it was great for traveling. I threw it in my bag. It was little and easy to use in the trailer, and it's just a gorgeous little deck. It has a beautiful cardstock. I absolutely love the cardstock on the US Games cards. They still have their copyright, but at least it's small, it's on the back, it's fairly unintrusive, and at least it's not in the artwork anymore. But anyway, I did a lot of work with this deck over the whole time that we were on vacation, we were traveling. I did take a bunch of decks with me. That's like a really weird experience, right? Trying to find decks that you want to travel with you. Because I feel guilty for the decks that I leave at home. Like what did I take on vacation? I took my Llewellyn, I took my Pocket Anna Kay, like no surprise there, right? Those two decks were just made for travel. They go with me everywhere. And I took some Lenormands this time, which we'll get to in a minute. And I took the White Sage Tarot. But I always feel guilty. Like it's such a struggle to find decks that like I'm going to be away for 14 days or whatever it was. And what do I want to take with me? What do I want to only have access to for that 14 days? And it's always a struggle every time I have to do this. It's always a struggle for me to decide, what decks are going to go and what decks are going to stay. Because I always feel like, oh, but I want to take that one. Oh, but I want to take that one. And I really just can't take my whole collection with me because I just don't have room in my trailer. So anyway, apparently I'm just going to be really tangent-y today. So this was a deck that I did a lot of work with the whole time that we were gone. I did a lot of readings with it. I used it for my daily draws. I didn't take any oracles with me, which was unusual because normally I do. But I really did enjoy this deck. It is kind of a predominantly animal deck, and which is not usually my thing, but I do really like it in this context. Some of the chakra associations, so this is a deck that does have chakra associations. I'm not real up on my whole chakra thing. I am still learning. Some of them seemed a little bit odd to me, but you know, I can totally work with it. The court cards are all animals, and in here, the swords are the big cats, and the wands, I think, if I could find one, because I think this is the Queen of Wands. Swords. Okay, so there's one. Of course, it's the last card, right? So the wands are the birds, and the swords are the big cats. Now, I would tend to do that the other way around, and so I did have a little bit of a struggle with that, because when I see birds, I immediately think swords, I think air, I think thought and mind. When I see, you know, wands, that's where I kind of go to that cat energy, that passion, that fire, that soul purpose. And to me, these two are a little bit transposed. Like, they should be the other way around. But she does explain it in the little guidebook, and it does make sense because these are like birds of prey, I believe. And then I forget what her association was with the cats. But anyway, I mean, she does make sense of it in the little white book, which I did read. It's your typical little white book. And it makes sense, but it's still like, every time I saw it, it still threw me off. So that was a little bit of, it took a little bit of getting used to, but overall, like, I really enjoyed the deck. Like, just everything about it is really pretty great. It's very pippish in the minors, which I absolutely love. And all the ribbons have a chakra association. Like, this star is a smudge. Like, that's just really cool. Love this 10 of Pentacles. So anyway, I'm like really babbling on about these decks today. Anyway, it's just a gorgeous little deck, and I really enjoyed working with it. I love the small size. It was perfect for travel. And I had some pretty great readings with it. I did find it to be kind of on the softer side, really nurturing. But that, you know, I was on vacation, so that was good for that time, because that's kind of what we were stepping away from, all the hustle and bustle, to kind of tap into that sort of natural rhythm and to get away and to kind of just rest and relax and play. So that was really great for that. So that was the White Sage Tarot in a tin. So when we got back from vacation, I kind of had like I was kind of in a fog for a little bit, because we were so disconnected for so long. You know, there's no internet, there's no cell phones, there's no power, there's no nothing where we were. And while that's really, really great, it kind of is a jarring shift when you get back home, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, you got work and you got the kids have school and all that going on. So it was kind of just this jarring shift. So I kind of had a little bit of a struggle transitioning back into the hustle and bustle of every day. So for the first week that we were back, or the next week in August, I used my Line Strider tarot and my Witchlings deck. Now, I find both of these decks to be very calming, very soothing, and comforting. And that was one of the reasons why I chose these two decks for that particular week, because I just kind of needed that little bit of extra help to make that transition, to kind of get back into things. And I really love the you know, they both have a nice soft color palette, which is really great. Both decks are fairly simplistic in their imagery, or minimalistic, I guess I should say, because simplistic makes it sound like they don't have substance, and both of these decks very much do have substance. Of course, I love the Line Strider. It's definitely one of my favorite decks. It's very nurturing, very gentle, but it doesn't, you know, shy away from the hard truth when you need it. And the Witchlings is just, it's a very nurturing, very empowering deck. The little booklet is really cute. It does have these nice little key phrases at the bottom and the keyword at the top. The one thing that this deck is missing that I wish it had is the name of the actual witchling on the card, because each of these witchlings has a name in the book, and I wish they were on the card, because that's kind of part of the whole thing of this deck, is that to get advice from this particular witchling. And there are also rituals, really simple, easy to do rituals and kind of witchy type stuff in the guidebook that you can use as well. But for the most part, I really just pulled a card and I noted the energy of the card and the key phrase at the bottom. So just a really wonderful little pairing, very nurturing, very much allowing me to make that space and to take that time that I needed to make that shift back from being so completely disconnected to all of a sudden bombarded again with the real world, really. So it's just really a beautiful pairing, and it worked really well for helping me to make that transition. This relaxation card came up twice for me in that week, so it was really interesting. And I really do love the way that they play together. So that is the Line Strider Tarot and the Witchlings, I think it just says Witchling deck and book set, but it's really kind of like an oracle. So in the last week of August, the last two decks that I worked with, and I think I had these the other way around, not that it really matters, is the Textured Tarot, and this is my Hedge Witch Botanical Oracle. And these two decks, so the Textured Tarot was one that I had mentioned in my favorites, Forevers, and Forgotten video that I did recently. And it's a deck that I bought, I looked at, I put aside, and I just didn't ever do anything with it. And so I really wanted to, doing that whole video, reminded me that I wanted to work with this deck. So I did a deck interview with it and used it for my daily draws for the week and did some readings and whatnot with it. But I have to say that I absolutely love this deck. I love all the images. I love the messages. I love the imagery. I cannot stand the cardstock. I was warned by several people when I featured this deck in my video that you cannot riffle shuffle this, and I'm a riffle shuffler, rifle, however you say it. That's one of the things I love about the old Llewellyn cardstock. Like, this thing just butter. Love that. So fabulous. Anyway, so that's kind of like I've mentioned before in other videos, the tactile experience is actually really kind of important to me when it comes to cards. And this, I had a really difficult time working with, which was a little bit disappointing. It is a very thick deck. It is very hard for me to overhand shuffle because they don't really slide really well. I mean, it's got this kind of nice matte cardstock, but it is kind of like cardboard, and it's super thick, and I have trouble with it. And I ended up doing like overhand shuffling in several different piles and then putting them back together, and it was just kind of a pain. So, I'm not trying to really bellyache about the deck. I absolutely love the deck, and I really wish there would be a second edition of this in a different cardstock, because this is cardboard. This is not card, like playing card or any sort of tarot card. This is just straight up cardboard. And it's just not great for working with. I'm sure it holds up really well, but I've had a lot of people, tell me that if you rifle it, it does bend the cards, and then they just have a bend in them and a crease, and that's an issue. So because I do want to use this deck more and I want to work with it, I'm trying to figure out how I can either modify it or make a copy and create my own deck, because as it sits now, it's really difficult for me to work with. And as much as I absolutely love the images and I love the pairing of these two decks, again, you get that, kind of busier or, deeply layered images with these very simplistic, minimalistic, I need to stop saying simplistic because these are not simplistic decks, but minimalistic deck with all this beautiful white space, and it just allows space for these cards to breathe. This image is in my tarot journal, I just noticed. Anyway, it just allows space for the cards to breathe. Sorry guys, I'm kind of like all over the place today, but we're just rolling with it. And they're absolutely gorgeous, and I love working with them together. And like I said, I really adore this deck. Like, truly adore this deck. And it's just such a shame that I'm having such trouble actually working with the cards, like physically working with them. So I'm going to try to address that because, I mean, look how beautiful. Oh, it's so gorgeous, you guys. Look, oh, is that just not the perfect Four of Swords? I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's a collage deck, which I tend to say I don't like collage decks. I figured it out. I don't like old school collage decks. I like the more modern ones. This card came up for me too, which was really wonderful. I like modern collage decks because the collage, for the most part, in most cases, is done really well. This deck has, in particular, I think is one of the best examples of a collage deck that I've seen in a really long time. I think the new Muse Tarot by Chris Ann, I think that's a collage deck as well. I do have that, but I haven't had a chance to work with it yet. And I flipped through the cards, and that one looks like a really beautifully done. I think that's collage as well. But I just absolutely love this deck. I just wish the cardstock was different, that I was able to work with it a little bit easier. But you know me, I'm going to figure out a way to fix that. Anyway, back to the point at hand, because I keep getting distracted today. You know, I'm having a total squirrel day. I absolutely love these two decks together. I love this card. It kind of has a sentimental value to me because I used to do show jumping when I was a kid, and I competed and did 3-day eventing and all that, so it was fun. But anyway, yeah, see, totally lacking focus today. Anyway, love these two decks. Think they just absolutely work beautifully together. This is one of the cards that the collaging is not. It's not my favorite, but there are very few cards that I actually say that about in this deck. For the most part, I mean, look at this. How beautiful is this with all the cosmic and then the kind of nightmarish hands in the shadow. It's just gorgeous. Okay, I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop because that's not the purpose of this video. I will do a walkthrough of this deck hopefully before too long, so we can talk about that more in a little bit in depth. But as far as using them together, I think they work beautifully. I love, again, that kind of really deep layered card mixed with the minimalistic oracle. It just really helps to kind of give things space and allow messages to breathe and come through, and I think that's really lovely. So that is the Textured Tarot and the Hedgewitch Botanical Oracle. So every month I also work with one oracle deck where I pull a card for the week. And this was another deck, the Wild Offering Oracle, that was in my Favorites, Forevers, and Forgottens video because it's one that I purchased and then threw in a box and didn't look at. This is a deck that I love Katie Davis's Daisy. I always say Davis. Katie Daisy's artwork. All this beautiful botanical goodness is just wonderful. And for the most part, I really do enjoy the messages, which is by Tasha Silver. Now, this does say it's a 52 card deck on giving it all to God. And I will mention that on occasion there are, look at the backs, how cool are those? And it's this gorgeous Hay House matte cardstock, which I just love. Their oracle decks these days have just been spot on for me. Anyway, a lot of sometimes, I wouldn't say a lot of, occasionally there is language within these cards that doesn't really resonate with my practice. A lot of times we just have, and it's all in relation to divinity, which is really in my mind all one thing, but certain words don't quite resonate with me as well as others, and so I just like to change them out when that happens. But here we have like Divine Beloved. I think that's wonderful. There's really only a few cases in this deck where Tasha Silver really does use the title of God or Lord. And those are the two phrases that don't really work very well. See, here's one. Help me, God, to release whatever people, places, or things drain my vital essence. So in my mind, I just changed that to a word that works for me and my practice. And I just changed that to divine or goddess or universe, whatever kind of works for me. But that is my only real quibble with this deck, and I probably will when in my journal, which you'll see in my upcoming video. I actually just, when cards came up that had that language in there that didn't quite resonate with me, I just wrote over the top of it in my printout and put whatever it is I wanted in there, and I'm probably going to do that to the deck itself. But for the most part, those instances are very few and far between, and I really do enjoy the messages that have come up. This is one of my favorite cards. Again, there's the Dear Lord. I just changed that. I have this card in another journal. Anyway, I love the messages. I think that it works really well for a type of draw to really sit and think about and reflect on the messages. So it worked really well using it for a whole week. Having one card to reflect on all week was really great. To me, this might be a little much for to use with a tarot deck, and I don't know that I would do that with this, because this to me is more of an affirmation type deck, and I tend to use those more as a weekly reflection or a message to think about for the week. So anyway, gorgeous deck. Love the artwork. The cardstock is, of course, that gorgeous Hay House matte, which is just spot on in my opinion. There's the beautiful backs and a fabulous little deck. And I'm glad that I pulled it out for that my previous video, so that I was reminded to go ahead and give it a try, because I have really enjoyed it this month. So that is the Wild Offering Oracle. So another thing that I did in August was actually started learning Lenormand, or Lenormand, however you say it. I tend to just say Lenormand. That's just what comes out of my mouth. So hopefully that is correct. In reading the history of the Lenormand, that's probably not even the name it should have anyway. But I have been reading Caitlin Matthews, The Complete Lenormand Oracle, and I have to say that this book, I am really enjoying it. It has been so much fun. While we were on vacation, so in preparation of vacation, I downloaded a ton of videos from Kelly at The Truth and Story. She has a bunch of Lenormand tutorial type videos, and I downloaded all of those to my phone, and I actually watched them while we were on vacation as part of my study, and I was reading Caitlin Matthews' book. And so I've been working on learning Lenormand, and I have to say I'm actually really loving it, which I'm kind of surprised. Actually, I don't know why I'm surprised, right? Because it's cards and I love cards, but I am kind of surprised how much I actually really like the system and like the process of it. I've been doing all the practice stuff, the smaller spreads. I have not gotten to the full grand tableau yet, but I'm really looking forward to that. But for right now, I'm just kind of focusing on those smaller spreads, kind of getting the hang of those before I move into the bigger one, because from my understanding and from what I've read and from what I saw in Kelly's videos, that the grand tableau is really just reading a bunch of those smaller spreads all together. So the decks I've been using for that is this is the Seeker's Lenormand. And this is just, I love all these Skull Garden decks. I think I have them all now. There is a new one coming out that's available for pre-order that I need to go ahead and get. There are a couple of the images, because I'm not terribly familiar with Lenormand artwork yet. There are a couple of images that, if it didn't have the title at the bottom, this one in particular, if this didn't say cross, I probably wouldn't have automatically gone to cross. I haven't memorized the numbers yet according to the card or the keywords. Love this writer. How cute is that? So there's just a couple of them in here that I wouldn't have known if the titles weren't down there. Obviously this snake kind of creeps me out, to be perfectly honest. Like, he's got like this flower growing out of the back of him, and it's a little bit creepy. It's interesting, but a little bit creepy too. Like this one for Coffin, I probably wouldn't have picked up on that had it didn't have the keywords. So since it has the keywords, again here with the scythe, it works quite well, because you if you don't quite know what the image is, you can always look to the keyword. And what I've learned with Lenormand is the images really don't matter. It's all about what the card is, and the variances in artwork between decks is really just for an aesthetic purpose. But really, a tree is a tree is a tree, regardless of the deck. A whip is a whip is a whip. So yeah, it's just, this one has been a really interesting one, and I've really enjoyed it, because I just absolutely love all of these, all the Skull Garden decks. I think they're fabulous. And the deck that I primarily have been using for my study is the 1889 Lenormand, which I'm actually really happy to be able to start using this, because the whole reason I bought this particular deck, it's absolutely gorgeous. The whole reason I bought this deck was to learn Lenormand. This is the only card that I really have a bit of a struggle with, because this is the cross card, but the cross is in the background. So my eye immediately goes to this figure here, and it takes me a minute to look at it and go, oh wait, there's the cross and 36, because like I said, I haven't 100% memorized all of the numbers for the cards yet. So, but it's just, oh, it's such a stunning deck. Just absolutely gorgeous. And I have I've really enjoyed working with that one. And I have picked up a couple of other Lenormand decks, because, you know, even though I have read and I have seen in other videos that you really only need one Lenormand, because unlike tarot where you read into the imagery, like I said, a tree is a tree is a tree, regardless of what tree you're looking at in what deck. But aesthetically speaking, because I tend to like the whole aesthetics of it all, I have bought a couple of different Lenormands as well, and I'll do a separate video on those at some point. But that is been my beginning budding relationship with Lenormand, and the two decks that I've been primarily using in August, and I have been really loving it. And so real quick, I just want to touch on a couple of books, because I know I've been rambling and this video is getting really, really long. But I just want to touch on a couple of books that I've been reading. I started the Akashic Records Made Easy while we were on vacation. You can see that's about as far as I got, because I ended up kind of killing my marker. I took another book, which I actually don't have out here, that I did a lot of highlighting in, and this one I was reading in the truck on the way to camping, and then by the time we got back into the truck, because this one I just kind of left in the truck, by the time we got back in the truck to come home and I was getting ready to read this, I realized that my highlighter was totally dead. So so far it's been interesting. I'm enjoying it. It says a clear and simple guide to the incredible philosophy of the Akashic Record and the ways in which they can improve and transform your life. So, you know, it's been an interesting read. I got it when Hay House was having like their $7 sale or something like that. So I haven't obviously finished it, but you know, it's one that I will finish, and I think that the idea of the Akashic Records is pretty fascinating. So, and I do like these Make It Easy books. This whole line of books that Hay House has, they're really pretty interesting. They're usually very well written, and they're really kind of quick, easy reads. The information is easy to devour, and I do really appreciate that. The next book that I was reading while we were on vacation was The Holy Wild Heathen Bible for the Untamed Woman. Now, I had mentioned in a previous video that I have Danielle Dolsky's Woman Most Wild, and I've struggled to finish that book because the language in it, it's very poetic, it's very beautiful, but it's almost overly done to the point of it makes it difficult to read. But this one is a lot... It's a lot simpler. It's a much easier read, I guess I should say. And if you can see, you know, I've done some highlighting in here, and it really is just a book that kind of talks about, doing, you know, having this kind of more feminist, divine feminine spiritual practice, and which I do really resonate with. I really like that. And then it goes into the different books. So there's a book of Earth where it talks about Earth verse. So it's just, she just has different stories that relate to goddess. She has rituals and some magic or spells and things of that nature. And then she also has it for each of the elements. So there's a book of water, a book of fire, a book of air, and a book of ether. And it's, you know, it's been really interesting. I don't know, I've highlighted a few things that I will probably pull out and make use of, but overall, like in terms of like the rituals and things of that nature, they're interesting, but I don't know that they're anything that I would actually really end up doing. But like I said, there's some nuggets all woven all throughout this book that I've found really interesting that I will be making note of and using. So I am glad that I got it, and it's been an interesting read. I don't know that it's one that I will return to often, but it is one that I might pick up now and then just to read some of the stories from, maybe as part of my spiritual practice or my sacred time. So that was that one. Definitely enjoyed it more than the previous book. Although, I mean, her previous book is beautifully written. It really is. It's very poetic, very deep, but it's a very heavy read. And sometimes that's just harder for me to focus on than others. And the last book that I want to talk about real quick is the fiction book that I've been reading alongside the Mists of Avalon, because you guys, it's going to take me all year to finish that book. It just really is. It's one that I only read little bits here and there. Not that I'm not enjoying it, because I am, but it's been a very slow read for me. In between, I'm reading other fiction books. So I'm reading currently The Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert, and who is also the author of Eat, Pray, Love. I did not read that book. I saw the movie. I don't remember it, to be perfectly honest with you, but this is a book that I picked up at Powell's. It was used. I'm only, as you can see, I'm only 100 some odd pages in, but I'm really enjoying it. It's kind of a book about a woman who grows up in this very intellectually stimulating environment, and it's very focused on botanical exploration, the science of plants, that sort of thing. And then apparently she's going to fall in love at some point, as it says in the back, although I'm not there yet. But I have to say, I've been a little bit surprised by the sexuality that's in this book. And I say that not because that bothers me, because it does not. It was unexpected. And so I just want to throw that out there, that there is some sexuality in this book, which I was not really expecting in a book that was kind of more about, it's kind of a scientific heavy book mixed in with the growing up of this young woman and the eventually, according to the back cover, a romance with a man, which I think maybe at this point that I'm at in the book, I think she might have just met. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's been a really enjoyable read. I'm actually really liking it. I read a few pages. I read quite a bit when we were on vacation, and then I've been trying to read a few pages before bed every night, just so that I can, get some time in with it. But I've been really enjoying it, so it's a great one. Just wanted to, little caveat for anybody who that might bother. There is some sexual nature in this book, so if that bothers you, this might be one that you want to stay clear of. But it's beautifully written and is very well done, so I'm really enjoying it. So that is the books that I have been reading in August, and of course the Caitlin Matthews book, The Complete Lenormand, which I mentioned previously. So anyway, that's it for me today. I hope you had a wonderful August, and I hope you have a beautiful September as well. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon for more Creative Tarot for an Inspired Life.